Couple took a black man's seat at the party, then learned he controls their funding. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Get your hands off that table. This is my seat. People like you don't belong here. The words detonated across the rooftop like broken glass on marble. Every conversation at the party snapped off mid-sentence. Champagne flutes froze inches from painted lips. Under the warm glow of hanging lights and the cold sweep of the skyline beyond the railing, a middle-aged white woman in a fitted crimson dress stood with her finger extended, trembling not with fear, but with entitlement. Her hair was sculpted into a perfect wave, jewelry catching the light like small blades. She didn't lower her voice. She wanted witnesses. Across from her, a black man stood beside the round table marked VIP. The placard sat at the center, brushed gold, immaculate. He wore a dark vest over a crisp white shirt, sleeves tailored, posture straight. His arms were folded, not defensively, but deliberately, like a line drawn in chalk that dared anyone to step over it. This is a private table, the woman continued, louder now, performing for the crowd. We paid for it. Security. Her husband leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, a smirk carved into his face as if he were watching theater. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His confidence lounged in the open space between them, fed by money and habit. A uniformed officer stood a few steps behind the man, eyes flicking from the placard to the woman's face. The city hummed below them, indifferent. Around the table, guests began to shift, some inching their chairs away, others angling their phones upward. Screens bloomed like a field of dark flowers. Sir, the woman said, switching tones with surgical ease, I'm going to need you to move. Now. The black man didn't answer. He didn't look at the officer. He didn't look at the husband. He lowered his gaze to the table instead, the linen smooth, the place settings precise, the small card stamped VIP reflecting the lights above. For a breath, the party mistook his silence for compliance. Then he looked up. There was no anger in his eyes. No plea. What settled over his face was colder than either, a calm that felt out of place in a room built for noise. The kind of calm that made people suddenly aware of their own voices. A ripple passed through the guests. Someone coughed. Someone laughed, too quickly. Another whisper cut through the air, is he serious? A woman near the railing murmured, does he know who she is? The woman in red scoffed. Don't stand there staring at me, she snapped. You're embarrassing yourself. This table is for donors. Her husband finally leaned forward, elbows on the table. You heard her, he said, tone lazy. Find another seat. Or better yet, another party. The officer cleared his throat, stepping half a pace closer. The night wind stirred the edge of the tablecloth. The skyline glittered, uncaring. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus Hale. Marcus's gaze moved not to the officer, not to the woman, but around the table. He took in the faces that had turned toward him, the ones recording, the ones pretending not to, the ones calculating which side would be safer to stand on in 5 minutes. He noticed the tiny tells, the tightened jaw, the forced smile, the waiter hovering too close, waiting for a cue. Security, the woman repeated, sharper now. Do your job. The officer hesitated. His radio crackled once, softly, like a warning it couldn't yet explain. Marcus unfolded his arms. The movement was small, but it shifted the room. He placed one hand on the back of the chair nearest him, not claiming it, not sitting, just touching it, as if to acknowledge its existence. His other hand slipped into his pocket. When it emerged, it held a phone. No flourish. No announcement. The husband rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go," he muttered. Marcus glanced at the gold VIP card again. For a moment, the party leaned forward, hungry. The woman in red drew a breath to say something crueler, something final. Marcus's thumb moved once across the screen. That was all. No one heard the consequences yet. But the air changed anyway, subtly, unmistakably. Laughter thinned. A smile fell away. Somewhere behind the lights and music, something important had just been touched. And the table so confidently claimed seconds earlier felt suddenly, inexplicably unstable. The silence didn't break. It spread. What had been a party seconds earlier now felt like a courtroom without a judge, only witnesses. The music thinned to a nervous echo, the skyline still glittering as if nothing had changed, as if the city below hadn't learned to look away from moments like this. The woman in red shifted her weight, heels clicking once against the stone floor. She hadn't expected resistance. Not real resistance. She was used to apologies, quick, embarrassed, grateful. She was used to people shrinking. Marcus didn't shrink. He stood where he was, phone resting loosely in his hand, gaze level. Not defiant. Not submissive. Simply present. The kind of presence that made other people aware of their own posture. A man at a nearby table leaned toward his date and whispered, "Who does he think he is?" Another voice answered, lower, uncertain. "I don't know, but something's off." The husband frowned. His earlier amusement drained into irritation. He hated delays. He hated being forced to notice someone he'd already dismissed. "This is ridiculous," he said, waving a hand toward the officer. "You asked him to move. So move him." The officer didn't move. He glanced again at the VIP placard, then at Marcus's phone, then back at the woman's face. His radio hummed softly, a private conversation the room wasn't invited into. He swallowed, buying time. "Sir," the officer said carefully, "we just need to clarify." "Clarify what?" the woman snapped. "That he's in the wrong place." Marcus finally spoke. "Just once." "Take your time," he said. 2 words. Calm. Almost courteous. They landed heavier than the shouting had. The woman stared at him, stunned not by what he said, but by the fact that he'd said it without asking permission. Around them, chairs scraped softly as guests adjusted, creating distance without meaning to. A waiter paused mid-step, tray trembling slightly in his hands. At the edge of the terrace, a young event coordinator pressed her earpiece tighter, her eyes fixed on Marcus. Recognition flickered across her face, then fear. She turned and hurried toward the back, heels quick, breath shallow. The husband noticed. His jaw tightened. "What's going on?" he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Phones were still up, but now they weren't pointed with glee. They were pointed with caution. The crowd had stopped laughing. They were measuring. Calculating how quickly a narrative could turn. Marcus's thumb hovered over his screen, then stilled. Whatever he'd already done, it was done. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and rested both hands lightly on the back of the chair again. Not sitting. Waiting. The woman's confidence cracked, not loudly, not yet, but enough to let panic breathe. "You think this is funny," she said, her voice rising. "Standing there like you own the place." Marcus met her eyes. "No," he said. "I think it's educational." The word confused her. It wasn't one she knew how to fight. Behind her, the skyline blinked. Below them, traffic flowed, ignorant of the lesson unfolding above it. Somewhere inside the building, a door opened and closed with purpose. Footsteps approached, measured, urgent. The officer's radio crackled again. This time, he answered it quietly. His expression changed. Not to fear. To clarity. The woman followed his gaze, then turned back to Marcus, searching his face for something she could still control. She found nothing. No threat. No triumph. Just patience. And patience, she was beginning to realize, was dangerous. A murmur rolled through the guests as a suited manager emerged onto the terrace, eyes locked on the VIP table. He slowed when he saw Marcus. Too slowly. As if stopping short of a mistake. The husband straightened. Good, he said under his breath. Finally. Marcus didn't move. He didn't need to. Whatever was coming next wasn't going to ask who belonged there. It was going to answer it. The assumption settled quickly. Comfortably. To the couple, to most of the guests watching from a safe distance, Marcus had already been placed into a category. A mistake. An interruption. Someone who had wandered too far past the invisible line and didn't yet realize it. He's probably with catering, a woman murmured near the bar, eyes never leaving her screen. No, another replied. Too well dressed. A third voice joined, confident and careless. He's someone's plus one. They always act like this. They nodded to one another, relieved. Labels restored order. Labels meant they didn't have to think too hard. The woman in red seized on it. Her voice softened, dripping with something that pretended to be patience. Listen, she said, tilting her head as if addressing a child. I don't know who invited you, but you're clearly confused. This table is for people who matter to this event. She tapped the VIP placard with one manicured finger. Major donors. Board members. Partners. Her husband smirked again, emboldened by the familiar rhythm of condescension. Look, he added, we're not trying to embarrass you. But this isn't your scene. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. As if humiliation were a favor. Marcus listened without reacting. He'd heard variations of this his entire life, different rooms, different accents, same message. The words weren't really for him anyway. They were for the audience. For reassurance. Behind them, the officer shifted his stance, discomfort creeping into his shoulders. The event manager hovered closer now, eyes darting between the couple and Marcus, clearly wishing the ground would intervene. The woman mistook the hesitation for victory. There we go, she said brightly, clapping once. You see? Even security understands. She leaned in closer to Marcus, lowering her voice just enough to feel intimate. Do yourself a favor, she whispered. Leave quietly. Before this gets worse. A few guests chuckled, grateful for the release. Tension eased slightly. This was the version of events they preferred. The one where the anomaly corrected itself. Marcus exhaled slowly through his nose. Not from nerves. From restraint. He glanced around the terrace again, letting his eyes settle briefly on each face. Some looked away. Others stared back, bold in their certainty that they were watching the right man be put in his place. What they didn't see, what they couldn't, were the invisible threads running through the room. The sponsors behind the lights. The vendors behind the catering. The silent agreements holding the entire evening upright. They thought power announced itself with volume. The husband checked his watch. This is taking too long, he muttered. We have people waiting on us. He turned sharply to the officer. Escort him out. Now. The officer hesitated just a fraction too long. Marcus noticed. The hesitation mattered. So that's it? Marcus asked calmly. The question caught them off guard. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't angry. It was almost curious. "That's it," the woman replied, her smile tight. "This party isn't for everyone." She expected him to argue, to plead, to reveal himself prematurely in desperation. He did none of it. Instead, Marcus nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. "Understood," he said. Relief rippled through the nearby tables. There it was. Resolution. The story could end the way they wanted. Then Marcus added, "Just so we're clear, you're asking me to leave my table." The woman laughed, sharp and incredulous. "Your table?" She glanced around theatrically. "Oh, sweetheart." The husband joined in. "That's rich." A few guests laughed with them, louder than necessary. The kind of laughter people use to drown out doubt. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't raise his voice. He simply waited. Behind the scenes, doors opened again. Footsteps stopped. The event manager's phone buzzed violently in his hand. The woman noticed the shift too late to stop it, just in time to feel it. Her laughter faltered. "What?" she snapped, suddenly unsure who she was talking to anymore. Marcus met her eyes. "Nothing," he said. "I just wanted to hear you say it." And in that moment, though they still didn't know who he was, the couple felt something slip. Not control. Not status. Certainty. They still thought he was no one. They just weren't sure anymore. And that uncertainty, thin, sharp, and growing, began to spread through the party like a quiet fracture, waiting for the pressure that would finally make it break. The pause stretched longer than anyone expected. The woman in red shifted again, irritation bleeding into her voice. "Why is everyone just standing there?" she snapped. "This is getting absurd." No one answered her. The event manager had stopped 2 steps behind the officer. His phone buzzed again, insistently this time. He didn't look at it right away. He looked at the VIP placard. Then at Marcus. Then back at the placard, as if seeing it for the first time. A thin line of sweat formed at his temple. "Sir," the officer said carefully, not to Marcus but to the manager, "I'm being told we need a moment." "A moment for what?" the husband demanded. "We've already made it clear." The manager finally glanced down at his phone. The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost imperceptible unless you were watching for it. He turned his body slightly away from the couple, lowering his voice. "Yes," he said into the phone. "He's here." "Yes, at the table." "I understand." The woman noticed the shift. Her smile didn't quite hold. "What is this?" she asked sharply. "Why are you whispering?" The manager ended the call. He didn't answer her right away. Instead, he straightened his jacket, a nervous habit, and cleared his throat. "There seems to be some confusion," he began. The husband scoffed. "Finally. Then clear it up." Marcus remained still, hands resting lightly on the chair. His attention never left the manager. "The VIP table," the manager continued slowly, choosing each word with care, "is reserved under a specific name." The woman crossed her arms. "Yes. Ours." The manager hesitated. That hesitation was everything. "It's reserved," he corrected, "by the primary sponsor." A murmur rippled through the terrace. Heads tilted. Phones rose again, not in mockery this time, but curiosity. The husband frowned. And that sponsor," the manager said, "requested the table remain undisturbed." The woman laughed, sharp and brittle. "You can't be serious. Are you saying he?" She gestured dismissively at Marcus. "That he's the sponsor?" The idea amused her. It had to. The alternative was unthinkable. Marcus didn't react. He didn't need to. The officer's radio crackled again, louder now. He listened, then nodded once to himself. When he looked back up, his posture had changed. Straighter. More formal. "Ma'am," he said to the woman, "I'm going to need everyone to step back from the table." Her eyes widened. "Excuse me. For now," the officer added. "Just while we verify." The husband stood abruptly, chair scraping against the stone. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "We're not moving anywhere." The officer didn't argue. He simply didn't move either. That was the moment the crowd felt it, the shift they'd been circling but avoiding. Conversations died out completely. Even the skyline seemed to dim, lights blinking through the glass as if watching. Marcus finally spoke again. His voice was low, even. "You were right earlier," he said, looking at the woman. "This party isn't for everyone." Her mouth opened, ready with something sharp. He finished the thought. "It's for people who understand where the money comes from." Silence followed. Not the awkward kind. The dangerous kind. The manager swallowed. "Sir," he said quietly, to Marcus, "would you like us to?" Marcus lifted a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. A small gesture. Absolute authority. "Not yet," he said. The woman stared at him now, really stared, searching his face for the weakness she'd assumed was there. She didn't find it. What she found instead was patience, measured, deliberate, and utterly unconcerned with her approval. For the first time that night, doubt crept fully into her expression. Not fear. Not understanding. But the unsettling realization that the rules she'd been playing by might not apply anymore. And whatever was about to happen next wouldn't ask her permission. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The terrace had gone quiet enough that the soft hum of the city below felt intrusive, like noise from another world. Every eye was on the space between him and the VIP table, the invisible line where certainty had once lived. The woman in red broke first. "This is insane," she said, forcing a laugh that no one joined. "You're letting this drag on because of him." She turned on the manager. "Do you have any idea who we are?" The manager didn't answer her. He was watching Marcus now, waiting. That alone was the answer. Marcus slid his phone from his pocket again. Not dramatically. Not to make a point. Just enough for those closest to see the screen light his palm. His thumb hovered for a brief second, as if considering something already decided. The husband scoffed. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Calling a friend." Marcus glanced at him, not with contempt, not with satisfaction, but with something colder. "Assessment." "No," he said simply. His thumb moved. One tap. One message sent. Nothing exploded. No alarm sounded. The music didn't stop. The city didn't flinch. For a heartbeat, it looked like nothing at all had happened. Then the phones began to buzz. Not Marcus's. Theirs. The husband's smile faltered as his jacket pocket vibrated. He ignored it at first, determined not to lose face. The woman's clutch lit up next, buzzing sharply against the table. She frowned, annoyed, and silenced it without looking. Around them, other guests glanced down at their screens. A sponsor whispered to his assistant. A donor's expression tightened as she reread the same notification twice. The manager's phone rang. He answered immediately. "Yes," he said. "I understand." A pause. "Effective immediately." Another pause. "Of course." He ended the call and looked up, face pale. The officer's radio crackled again. This time, he spoke into it. "Confirmed," he said quietly. The woman felt it before she understood it. The air had changed again, but now it was heavier. Pressurized. "What is going on?" she demanded, her voice sharp with the first edge of panic. Marcus slipped his phone back into his pocket. He rested his hand on the chair one last time, then straightened. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said calmly. Yet. The husband finally checked his phone. His eyes scanned the screen. Once. Twice. His jaw tightened. "Who is Marcus Hale?" he muttered. The question landed like a dropped glass. The woman turned to him sharply. "What?" He didn't answer her. His attention was locked on the screen now, fingers trembling slightly as another alert came through. Then another. Marcus heard it. He always did. "That depends," Marcus said, voice even, "on what you were expecting tonight." The manager stepped forward, voice low and strained. "Sir," he said to Marcus, "we've just been informed that several funding commitments for this event have been paused." A ripple of shock passed through the terrace. "Paused," the woman repeated. "What does that mean?" The manager hesitated, then answered honestly. "It means we're going to need to reassess the evening." The husband looked up, eyes wide now. "You can't do that," he snapped. "We're in the middle of..." Marcus interrupted him. Gently. "So was I," he said. Silence fell again, absolute this time. The woman stared at Marcus, really seeing him now, as pieces began to align in her mind. The tailored suit. The patience. The way the staff had shifted toward him without realizing it. "You," she began, then stopped. Her voice failed her. Marcus met her gaze. There was no triumph there. Only finality. "You asked me to leave quietly," he said. "I decided to stay." And with that decision made calmly, without spectacle, the foundation beneath the party began to crack, one silent notification at a time. The unraveling didn't arrive loudly. It arrived efficiently. Phones continued to buzz across the terrace, short vibrations, clipped tones, the sound of systems updating themselves without asking permission. Conversations didn't restart. They couldn't. Too many people were reading the same words with different consequences. The manager stepped aside, speaking urgently into his phone. "Yes. I see that. No, we don't have confirmation on replacement funding." He stopped, listening. His shoulders dropped a fraction. "Understood." He hung up and looked at the officer. The officer nodded once. No words exchanged. None were needed. The husband's hands were shaking now. He tried to mask it by shoving his phone back into his pocket, but it vibrated again immediately. This time, he answered. "What do you mean on hold?" he snapped. "We signed." He stopped mid-sentence, face draining as the voice on the other end continued. "No. No, you can't just." The call ended. The woman watched him, confusion turning sharp. "What is it?" she demanded. "Who keeps calling you?" He didn't answer her right away. His mouth opened, closed. He swallowed. "Our bank," he said finally. "They're reviewing something." "Reviewing what?" Before he could respond, her own phone rang again. She hesitated, then answered with forced confidence. "Yes." Her posture changed almost immediately. The confidence collapsed inward, folding into something brittle. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "We've been donors here for years." A pause. "Primary sponsor?" "No, that's not." She lowered the phone slowly, staring at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. Around them, whispers grew bolder. "They pulled funding." "No, he pulled funding." "Is that even possible?" "Apparently." Marcus remained still, detached from the chaos he'd triggered. He watched the couple with the same calm he'd carried from the beginning, not with satisfaction, but with precision. This was never personal. It was structural. The manager approached him carefully, voice low. "Sir, multiple partners are calling. They're asking for guidance." Marcus nodded once. Tell them the review is comprehensive. Yes, sir. The woman laughed suddenly, a thin, desperate sound. This is insane, she said, looking around for allies that no longer met her eyes. You can't just shut things down because of a misunderstanding. Marcus finally stepped away from the chair. He didn't move toward her. He didn't loom. He simply repositioned himself so the VIP table was clearly behind him, now unclaimed, neutral, waiting. This wasn't a misunderstanding, he said evenly. It was a demonstration. The husband bristled. You think you're teaching us a lesson? Marcus considered the question. No, he said. I think you taught it yourselves. A donor at a nearby table stood abruptly, chair scraping. We should probably. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. His wife was already pulling him away, eyes darting toward Marcus with a new calculation. The party was dissolving. Not officially. Not yet. But the current had changed. People no longer clustered around the couple. They drifted instead toward exits, toward staff, toward anywhere that felt safer than standing too close to a collapsing assumption. The officer stepped forward, voice firm but respectful. Ma'am, sir, I'm going to need you to clear the table. The woman stared at him. You can't be serious. I am, he said. Immediately. Her mouth opened in protest, then closed. For the first time that night, she had no leverage left to spend. Marcus watched as they gathered their things too quickly, clumsily. The woman's hands fumbled with her clutch. The husband avoided everyone's eyes. As they stepped away, the VIP placard sat untouched at the center of the table, gleaming under the lights. The terrace felt lighter without them. Emptier. Honest. Marcus exhaled once, slow and controlled. The collapse was underway, not with a bang, but with compliance. And everyone watching understood the same thing at the same time. This wasn't over. It was just becoming visible. The manager cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the murmurs like a blade through silk. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice tight but audible, may I have your attention for just a moment? The terrace obeyed. Not because of his authority but because of where his eyes were pointed. Marcus. The woman in red froze mid-step. Her husband stopped beside her, one hand still gripping his phone as if it might explain itself if he stared long enough. The manager continued, carefully now. There appears to have been a misunderstanding regarding tonight's primary sponsorship. A few guests exchanged glances. Someone whispered, primary. The manager turned fully toward Marcus. Mr. Hale, he said, lowering his head slightly, we've confirmed with our board and legal team. The table, the event, and the associated funding are all under your direction. The words landed softly. The impact did not. A gasp rippled through the terrace. Not loud, collective. Phones lifted again, but this time no one laughed. Faces shifted, recalibrating in real time. The woman's mouth opened. Closed. That's not possible, she said faintly. This is. Her husband stared at Marcus, recognition finally clicking into place with a sickening certainty. Marcus Hale, he repeated under his breath. Hale Capital. Marcus didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it either. He didn't need to. Yes, the manager said, unable to help himself. Hale Capital is the lead investor behind tonight's initiative. Without their support, he hesitated. There is no event. Silence swallowed the terrace whole. The woman's face drained of color. You knew, she whispered, more accusation than question. You knew the whole time. Marcus met her eyes. I knew who I was, he said evenly. I didn't know who you were yet. That was worse. Around them, guests began to step back instinctively, urgently. Some offered awkward smiles. Others looked away, ashamed. A few tried to pretend they'd never laughed at all. The officer straightened to full attention. The VIP placard gleamed uselessly between empty chairs. The manager spoke again, almost reverent now. "Mr. Hale, how would you like to proceed?" Marcus looked at the table. Then at the skyline. Then back at the room full of people who had decided too quickly where he belonged. "Finish the evening," he said. "Without them." The woman flinched as if struck. "You can't," she began. Marcus turned to her, not cruelly, not loudly. "You already did," he said. "You just didn't realize it." Security stepped forward. This time, there was no hesitation. As the couple were escorted away, the terrace remained silent. No cheers. No applause. Only the quiet recalibration of power, happening too fast for denial. Marcus took his seat at the VIP table at last. Calm. Composed. Unbothered. The reveal wasn't dramatic. It was definitive. And every person watching understood the same thing in that moment. They hadn't just misjudged a man. They had misjudged who was holding the entire night together. The party didn't resume. It couldn't. Music continued somewhere behind the glass doors, but out on the terrace, the sound felt irrelevant, like a soundtrack playing for a scene that had already ended. People stood in small, awkward clusters now, unsure where to place their bodies, their eyes, their loyalty. The space around Marcus widened. Not because he demanded it. Because no one wanted to stand too close to the truth they just witnessed. A woman who had laughed earlier avoided his gaze as she passed, smile tight and apologetic. A man who had raised his phone lowered it slowly, as if embarrassed by the evidence he'd almost collected. Whispers moved through the crowd, not sharp anymore, but reverent. "Did you hear what he did? He pulled everything. All of it." The manager moved swiftly, issuing quiet instructions. Staff adjusted the layout, removing the abandoned chairs with practiced efficiency. The VIP placard was reset, centered, its meaning restored. Marcus sat calmly, hands folded, posture relaxed. He didn't look around to see who was watching. He already knew. The officer returned, standing a respectful distance away. "Sir," he said, voice steady, "is there anything you need?" Marcus shook his head. "No." Across the terrace, the couple's voices could still be heard faintly, protests dissolving into disbelief as security guided them toward the exit. No one followed. No one defended them. Power had shifted, and the crowd had shifted with it. A donor approached Marcus cautiously, glass in hand. "Mr. Hale," he began, clearing his throat. "I just wanted to say. I'm sorry. About earlier." Marcus looked up at him. "Not cold. Not warm. You don't need to apologize to me," he said. "Just remember what you saw." The man nodded, chastened, and stepped back. Another guest leaned in to whisper, "You handled that with remarkable restraint." Marcus allowed himself the faintest smile. Restraint is easier when you don't confuse dignity with silence. The skyline stretched behind him, light steady now, unbothered by the drama that had unfolded above it. The city had seen this before. It always did. Phones continued to buzz, but now with different messages. Press inquiries. Board confirmations. Quiet panic disguised as professionalism. The manager returned once more. "Everything is stabilized," he said. "Your guidance has been circulated." "Good," Marcus replied. The terrace slowly found a new equilibrium. Conversations resumed, subdued and careful. Laughter returned, but it carried less certainty than before. Everyone there had learned the same lesson, whether they admitted it or not. Power didn't need to announce itself. It simply corrected the room and waited for everyone else to catch up. Marcus didn't stay long after that. He never did. The terrace slowly refilled with sound-measured voices, cautious laughter, the clink of glasses raised with less confidence than before. The event would go on, technically successful, publicly intact. Photos would be posted. Statements would be polished. By morning, the story would already be reshaped. But the truth of it would linger. Marcus rose from the VIP table without ceremony. Chairs shifted to make space for him. People noticed then pretended they hadn't. He buttoned his jacket, nodded once to the manager, and walked toward the exit, unhurried. No one stopped him. Outside, the night air was cooler, cleaner. The city stretched endlessly in front of him, indifferent and honest. Traffic lights blinked. Somewhere below, a busker played a tune that didn't care who funded what. His phone vibrated once more. A confirmation. Another review completed. Another structure corrected. Marcus slid the phone back into his pocket and exhaled. Behind him, on the terrace, the couple were gone. Their seats reclaimed by absence. Their certainty dismantled without shouting, without spectacle, just consequence. By morning, funding lines would be redrawn. Boards would convene. Calls would be returned with a different tone. People who had laughed would speak carefully about miscommunication and learning moments. Marcus didn't need apologies. He stepped into the elevator alone, doors closing softly, cutting off the glow of the party above. As the car descended, his reflection stared back at him, calm, composed, unchanged. This wasn't a victory. It was alignment. Above him, the VIP table would host new conversations, new alliances. Some guests would remember what they'd seen. Others would convince themselves they'd imagined it. That was always how it went. But a few, just enough, would pause the next time they decided who belonged in a room. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. Marcus stepped out into the night and walked away without looking back. Because dignity didn't need witnesses. Because power didn't need permission. And because the most lasting corrections were never loud. They were simply final.